A German shepherd stood motionless in the shadows of Oak Haven's maple trees, watching. For weeks, the residents had dismissed him as just another stray until today. 6-year-old Lily Wilson's scream pierced the autumn air as a man's hand clamped over her mouth. The sedan door swung open. In that moment, 80 pounds of muscle and fur exploded from the bushes, a blur of black and tan against the falling leaves. The dog's jaws didn't close on flesh. They didn't need to. He positioned himself between predator and prey, his bark deep and commanding. A sound that carried the weight of authority long forgotten by the neighborhood but remembered in his bones. The man stumbled backward, eyes wide with terror as the shepherd's hackles rose. No one saw the military precision in the dog's stance. No one knew that the animal defending little Lily had once worn a badge, until everything changed. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Oak Haven wasn't the kind of place where parents worried about their children playing outside. Nestled in the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, the neighborhood boasted wide streets lined with mature trees, well-maintained parks, and a tight-knit community where folks still brought casseroles when new neighbors moved in. The crime rate was so low that the local newspaper often filled space with stories about rescued cats and community bake sales. Thomas and Sarah Wilson had chosen Oak Haven specifically for this sense of security when they moved from Boston 3 years ago. Thomas, an accountant with a local firm, and Sarah, a part-time librarian, wanted a safe place to raise their daughter, Lily. At 6 years old, Lily was a bright-eyed child with strawberry blonde pigtails and a sprinkling of freckles across her nose. She loved butterflies, chocolate ice cream, and had recently developed a fascination with dogs, particularly one dog. That dog had been a fixture in Oak Haven for nearly 8 months. A large German shepherd with intelligent eyes and a distinctive scar across his muzzle. No one knew where he came from. He simply appeared one day, keeping to himself, but somehow always present. He wasn't aggressive, but his size and intense gaze made many residents uneasy. He slept under the gazebo in Memorial Park, drank from the creek behind the elementary school, and scavenged meals from restaurant dumpsters. Chief Blake Anderson, who'd served Oak Haven's police department for 30 years, had received numerous calls about the stray. But every attempt to capture him had failed. The dog seemed to possess an uncanny ability to anticipate their tactics, like he's been trained by the best. Anderson had remarked once, not knowing how close to the truth he was. Warren Cooper had moved to Oak Haven just 6 months ago, quickly establishing himself as a pillar of the community. As a substitute teacher with impeccable credentials and a winning smile, he volunteered for community events and coached Little League on weekends. Parents trusted him implicitly. Officer Ethan Carter was the newest addition to Oak Haven's small police force. Fresh out of the academy at 26, he had taken a particular interest in the mysterious German shepherd, often leaving food where the dog frequented, hoping to gain his trust. None of them knew that their lives were about to intersect in ways that would forever change Oak Haven. Autumn had settled comfortably over Oak Haven, painting the neighborhood in warm ambers and fiery reds. Normally, Lily walked home from Oak Ridge Elementary with a cluster of friends, their backpacks bouncing as they skipped along the sidewalks. Today was different. A doctor's appointment for her asthma checkup had pulled her from school early, and now she was making the journey home alone for the first time, clutching the permission slip her mother had signed. Remember, straight home. Sarah had instructed before leaving for her shift at the library. No detours. Lily had nodded solemnly, but her mother's warning hadn't prevented her from tucking an extra sandwich into her lunchbox that morning. It wasn't for her, but for the dog, her secret friend. 3 blocks from Oak Ridge Elementary, Max lay in the dappled shade of a sprawling elm, his ears perked forward, amber eyes alert. To casual observers, he appeared to be dozing, but every muscle in his powerful body remained tensed, ready. His internal clock told him school would be letting out soon. While most residents of Oak Haven gave the large German Shepherd a wide berth, Max had memorized the daily rhythms of the neighborhood with military precision. Lily's scent reached him before he saw her strawberry shampoo, the subtle medicinal hint of her asthma inhaler, and the peanut butter sandwich she always carried. For weeks now, she'd been the only human brave enough to approach him, leaving her offerings at a respectful distance before retreating. Max never moved until she was gone. But the food always disappeared. Today, Lily was early and alone, Max's head lifted, nostrils flaring. Something wasn't right. Inside the teacher's lounge at Oak Ridge Elementary, Warren Cooper was gathering his belongings, his substitute teaching assignment complete for the day. Checking his reflection in the small mirror by the door, he straightened his tie and practiced his smile, the one that parents found trustworthy and children found friendly. Beneath that carefully constructed exterior, his mind worked through calculations and opportunities. Heading out early today, Warren asked the school secretary. "Just a doctor's appointment," he replied smoothly. "See you tomorrow." Cooper's sedan rolled slowly down Maple Street, his eyes scanning the sidewalks until he spotted her, a small figure with a purple backpack, walking alone. His pulse quickened. He'd been watching Lily Wilson for weeks now, noting her routine, her personality, her trusting nature. The opportunity to find her alone had seemed impossible in this close-knit community. Until today. Lily was so focused on searching for Max that she didn't notice the car slowing beside her until a familiar voice called out, "Hey there, Lily, everything okay? Where are your friends today?" She looked up to see Mr. Cooper, the nice substitute teacher who had brought cookies to class last week. Her mother had taught her not to talk to strangers. But Mr. Cooper wasn't a stranger. He was a teacher. "I had a doctor's appointment," she explained, clutching her backpack straps tighter. Cooper's smile widened. "It's pretty hot today. Need a ride home? I'm heading that way." Lily hesitated, remembering her mother's stern warnings about never getting into cars, even with people she knew. "No, thank you, Mr. Cooper. My house is close." "I've got some candy from the teacher's party," he persisted, holding out a colorful wrapped sweet. "How about one for the walk?" The car door opened, and Cooper stepped out, still smiling, but moving with purpose now. "Come on, Lily. It's too hot to walk. Let me drive you." Fear blossomed in Lily's chest as Mr. Cooper took a step toward her, his hand extended. Something in his eyes had changed. They weren't kind anymore. From his vantage point beneath the elm, Max watched the interaction unfold. The man's body language triggered recognition patterns ingrained through years of police training. Predatory intent, threat assessment, potential abduction in progress. Max moved without conscious thought, covering the distance in a silent, ground-eating lope. Neither Lily nor Cooper noticed his approach until he was upon them, inserting his massive form between the child and the man. The transformation in the dog was immediate and terrifying. Gone was the aloof stray that avoided human contact. In his place stood a trained protector, hackles raised, teeth bared in a silent snarl that communicated one unmistakable message: back away. Cooper froze, his hand still outstretched. "Easy, boy," he said, his voice tight with sudden fear. "Good dog." Max's growl rumbled from deep in his chest, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the pavement. When Cooper attempted to step around him, Max matched the movement with precision, keeping Lily shielded behind his body. "Lily," Cooper said, his voice strained with forced pleasantness. "Call off your dog." "He's not my dog," Lily whispered, both frightened and amazed by Max's sudden appearance. Cooper made a fatal miscalculation then. Lunging forward to grab Lily's arm, Max exploded into action, his training evident in every movement. He didn't bite. K-9 officers were trained for controlled response, but he slammed his powerful body into Cooper's chest, knocking him backward onto the pavement with a thud that knocked the wind from his lungs. Cooper scrambled to his feet, face contorted with rage and fear. "You'll regret this," he hissed. But his threat lacked conviction as Max advanced another step, his stance unmistakably that of a police dog preparing to pursue. The confrontation might have escalated further had Mrs. Abernathy not chosen that moment to step onto her porch across the street. "Is everything all right over there?" she called, her elderly voice carrying surprisingly well. Cooper glanced between the dog, the child, and the witness, making rapid calculations. With a final venomous glare, he retreated to his car, tires squealing as he accelerated away. Lily stood frozen, her small hand unconsciously finding its way to Max's fur. The German Shepherd remained rigid until Cooper's car disappeared around the corner. Only then did he relax slightly, turning to look up at the child he'd protected with intelligent eyes that seemed to ask, "Are you hurt?" "You saved me," Lily whispered, awe replacing fear in her voice. "Thank you." For the first time since she'd begun leaving food for him, Max allowed the child's touch, leaning slightly against her trembling legs in a gesture of reassurance as familiar to him as breathing. 3 houses down, Mrs. Abernathy was already on the phone to both the police and Lily's parents. The police cruiser pulled up to the curb with lights flashing, but no siren. Chief Anderson behind the wheel and Officer Carter in the passenger seat. By then, Sarah Wilson had arrived, clutching Lily to her chest on Mrs. Abernathy's front porch while her daughter recounted the incident between gasping breaths. The German Shepherd sat at the bottom step, alert but maintaining a respectful distance. "And then Max knocked him down," Lily was saying, her small hands gesturing emphatically. "He was really brave." "Mom?" "Max?" Sarah asked, smoothing her daughter's hair with trembling fingers. "That's what I call him," Lily explained, pointing to the dog. "He likes peanut butter sandwiches." Chief Anderson approached carefully, his weathered face grave beneath salt and pepper hair. After 40 years in law enforcement, the last 30 in Oak Haven, he thought he'd seen everything. But a stray dog intervening in an attempted abduction, that was new. "Mrs. Wilson," he nodded. "Lily, I understand you've had quite a scare." While Anderson took statements, Officer Carter found himself drawn to the German Shepherd, As the youngest member of Oak Haven's small police force, Ethan had spent months trying to gain the stray's trust, leaving food and watching from a distance. Now, he studied the dog with newfound interest. "Hey there, fella," he said softly, crouching down. The dog regarded him with intelligent eyes but made no move to approach. "You did good today." Something about the dog's stance struck Carter as familiar. "Chief," he called over his shoulder, "does he look like a police dog to you?" Anderson paused mid-sentence, turning to study the German Shepherd more carefully. "Son of a gun," he muttered. "He does at that." "Can we check if he's chipped?" Carter suggested. 20 minutes later, the scanner confirmed what Carter had suspected. The dog was indeed microchipped, and the information that appeared on the scanner's display sent a ripple of astonishment through the gathered officers. "Max," Anderson read aloud. "K9 Unit Number 437, Denver Police Department. Handler Officer Michael Reynolds." Sarah looked up sharply. "Denver? That's over 800 miles away." "Says here he was a decorated officer," Carter continued, scrolling through the information. "Multiple commendations for narcotics detection and protection detail." He whistled low. "This isn't just any police dog. According to this, Max received the Medal of Valor 2 years ago for saving his handler's life during a drug bust gone wrong." Anderson's radio crackled with an update. The license plate Mrs. Abernathy had managed to partially glimpse belonged to Warren Cooper, the substitute teacher. A patrol car had been dispatched to his residence, but he wasn't home. "I want an APB out on Cooper right away," Anderson ordered, "and contact Denver PD. I want to know everything about this dog and how he ended up on our streets." By evening, the pieces began falling into place. Denver Police Department confirmed that Max had indeed been one of their most decorated K9 officers, partnered with Officer Michael Reynolds for 6 years. The story that unfolded next cast a somber mood over the Oak Haven police station. Officer Reynolds had died suddenly 18 months ago, an apparent heart attack at age 42, with no family to take Max, and the dog showing signs of depression. He had been adopted by a family in Colorado Springs. 3 weeks after the adoption, Max had disappeared. Despite extensive searches, he had never been found. Until now, nearly 1,000 miles away, where he had just prevented a child abduction. "The training never leaves them," explained the Denver K9 unit commander over the phone. "Max was specifically trained for protection and pursuit. If he intervened, he saw a legitimate threat. The revelation transformed Max overnight from community nuisance to local hero. News vans parked along Maple Street, reporters eager for footage of the guardian shepherd. Social media exploded with the story of the retired police dog who had traveled across states, only to resume his duty in a quiet suburb where a predator had been hiding in plain sight for the Wilson family. The aftermath was both heartwarming and overwhelming. Thomas took time off work to stay home with Lily, who woke crying from nightmares about the bad teacher. Sarah fielded constant calls from concerned parents and media outlets. Through it all, Max remained a constant presence. Sleeping beneath their front porch but refusing to enter the house, as though unsure of his welcome. "He saved our daughter," Thomas said on the third night, watching through the window as Max patrolled the perimeter of their yard. "We owe him everything." "Denver PD says the family that adopted him is willing to relinquish any claim," Sarah replied, They think he'd be happier here, with Lily. Thomas nodded slowly. Then I guess we just gained a very unusual family member. The following morning brought the first major twist to the case. Warren Cooper was found attempting to cross the state line into California. The search of his vehicle revealed a disturbing collection of children's items, hair ribbons, small toys, a bracelet with the name Katie engraved on it. Most damning of all was a detailed notebook containing information about several children from Oak Haven and neighboring communities, including Lily. But the real shock came when Cooper's identity was processed through the system. Warren Cooper was a false identity. His real name was Walter Connolly, and he had no prior criminal record, no history of violence, no red flags that might have warned the school district before hiring him. He was, by all accounts, a respected member of his previous community in Nebraska, where he'd worked as an accountant for 15 years before abruptly resigning and disappearing 6 months ago. "How does someone just decide to become a child predator?" Carter asked, staring at Cooper's Connolly's booking photo. "Maybe he didn't just decide," Anderson replied grimly. "Maybe he's been hiding it all along, and only now got caught." The implications sent a chill through Oak Haven. If someone like Cooper could infiltrate their community so seamlessly, who else might be hiding dark secrets behind friendly smiles? As the investigation deepened, Officer Carter spent increasingly more time with Max, fascinated by the dog's story. With permission from Denver PD, he accessed Max's service records and began piecing together the German Shepherd's remarkable journey. According to his last medical exam, Carter told the Wilsons, Max had arthritis in his back legs from an injury sustained in the line of duty. That's why he was set to retire soon anyway. But the vet noted something else interesting. Max had unusually high intelligence, even for a police dog. He could recognize over 200 distinct commands and had demonstrated problem-solving abilities that surprised even his trainers. Smart enough to travel 800 miles to find a new purpose, Thomas mused, watching as Lily cautiously offered Max a piece of her sandwich in the backyard. The German Shepherd took it gently from her fingers, his eyes never leaving her face. "There's something else," Carter added, his voice lower. "I talked to Officer Reynolds' former partner in Denver. He said that in the weeks before Reynolds died, they were working a case involving a child trafficking ring with connections to Arizona." Sarah's eyes widened. "You don't think—" "I don't know what to think," Carter admitted. "But it's one hell of a coincidence." The October sun cast long shadows across the Wilsons' backyard as Thomas crouched beside Max, tentatively extending a new leather collar. "What do you think? Boy, ready to make it official." Max regarded the offering with measured interest, his amber eyes shifting between the collar and Thomas's face. After a week of sleeping under their porch, the German Shepherd had developed a cautious routine with the family, accepting food, allowing brief touches, and maintaining a constant protective perimeter around Lily, but never fully relaxing his vigilance. "He's still not sure," Sarah observed from the back steps. "Can't blame him after everything he's been through." The Wilsons had transformed their garage into a comfortable space for Max, complete with an orthopedic bed for his arthritic legs, but the dog preferred to remain outside, free to patrol. The only exception came during Lily's nightmares, when somehow, despite closed doors, Max would appear beside her bed, a silent sentinel until her breathing steadied. "Denver PD sent over his service records," Thomas said. setting the collar aside when Max showed no interest. Apparently, he was scheduled for retirement anyway because of his injury. They're officially releasing him to us, with Carter's help. Sarah nodded, watching Lily attempt to teach Max to shake hands in the dappled shade of their maple tree. I still can't believe Cooper, Connolly, whatever his name is, was hiding right under our noses, teaching our children. The arrest of Walter Connolly had sent shockwaves through Oak Haven. Parents demanded answers from school administrators who had failed to detect his false credentials. The revelation that he had no prior criminal record provided little comfort. Everyone wondered what might have happened if not for Max's intervention. "Chief Anderson called this morning," Thomas said, lowering his voice. "They found evidence connecting Connolly to at least 3 other missing children cases across state lines. Hair samples in his possession match a girl who disappeared from New Mexico last year." Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth. "My God!" "That's not all," Thomas continued grimly. "Remember what Carter said about Officer Reynolds investigating a trafficking ring before his death? Turns out there might be a connection. The FBI is taking over the case." Across town at the Oak Haven Police Department, Officer Ethan Carter spread photographs across his desk, constructing a timeline of Max's remarkable journey. Veterinary records from Denver indicated the German Shepherd had sustained injuries consistent with a fall or impact approximately 14 months ago, shortly after his disappearance from Colorado Springs. Somewhere during his journey, Max had encountered trouble. Carter pinned a map to his bulletin board, tracing possible routes from Colorado to Arizona. 800 miles, he murmured, shaking his head in wonder. "What were you tracking, boy?" The phone on his desk rang, startling him from his thoughts. It was the FBI liaison, Agent Diana Walsh. "Officer Carter, we've been analyzing Connolly's movements prior to his arrival in Oak Haven. His credit card records show stops in the same 3 towns where children went missing over the past 18 months. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. "So he's definitely connected to the other disappearances." "It appears so," Walsh confirmed. "But here's where it gets interesting. We've been looking into Officer Reynolds' death as well, given the potential connection to this trafficking investigation. The medical examiner ruled it a heart attack, but we've requested his tissue samples be re-examined." "You think it wasn't natural causes?" "At this point, we're exploring all possibilities. Reynolds was in excellent health, according to his last physical. A sudden heart attack in a 42-year-old with no prior cardiac issues raises questions." After hanging up, Carter stared at the map again, a disturbing theory forming. What if Max hadn't run away out of grief? What if he had been tracking his handler's killer all along? 3 days later, the Wilsons received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Eleanor Simmons, a veterinary behaviorist specializing in service animals, stood on their front porch with a worn leather bag and a kind smile etched into her 60-year-old face. "The department thought you might appreciate some professional guidance," she explained. "Max is a special case. Most K-9 officers struggle with the transition to pet life, but add in his trauma and extensive journey. Well, he needs specialized care." Over tea at the kitchen table, Dr. Simmons explained the complexities of Max's psychology. "He's operating on training and instinct. These dogs form profound bonds with their handlers. When Officer Reynolds died, Max likely experienced something akin to profound grief. The fact that he ran away from his adoptive family isn't surprising. He was searching for purpose. "And he found it here," Sarah said softly. "With Lily." Dr. Simmons nodded thoughtfully. "Police, dogs, especially those trained in protection, have an innate sense for detecting threats. Max recognized something predatory in Connolly's behavior that most humans missed. That's both remarkable and concerning." "Concerning?" Thomas asked. "Max is still in working mode. He hasn't decompressed from his service duties. That hypervigilance isn't sustainable long-term. For his health and well-being, he needs to learn how to be a dog again, not just an officer on eternal duty." The behavioral specialist developed a gradual transition plan for Max, incorporating structured play, relaxation techniques, and clear boundaries. Most importantly, she helped the Wilsons understand that Max's healing would take time. "Be patient," she advised before leaving. "He's carrying invisible wounds, but I've never seen a stronger bond form so quickly than what he has with your daughter. That connection might be what finally helps him heal." Meanwhile, Max's behavior had begun showing unusual patterns that caught Carter's attention. The German Shepherd would disappear for hours at specific times, returning to the Wilson home tired but seemingly satisfied. Curious, Carter began tracking these excursions. "He's patrolling," Carter told Chief Anderson after a week of observations. "Not randomly. He follows specific routes through Oak Haven, always passing by the elementary school during arrival and dismissal times. He checks the park, the community center, anywhere children gather." Anderson rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Still on duty, even in retirement." "There's more," Carter continued, spreading a map across Anderson's desk. "I followed him yesterday to Ridgeview Park on the north side of town. He spent 20 minutes investigating this area by the old boathouse, then left, so I checked it out afterward. And found these hidden under some brush." Carter placed an evidence bag on the desk containing a child's hair ribbon and a small bracelet. Preliminary tests matched the hair follicles to Katie Simmons, one of the missing children connected to Connolly. Anderson's eyes widened. "You think Connolly used that location, maybe as a meeting point or transfer location?" "Max found it somehow, Chief. I think he's actively searching for these missing kids. He's not just a retired K-9, he's still working the case. His handler started." The discovery transformed the investigation. With Max's unexpected assistance, law enforcement began identifying locations connected to the trafficking operation. The German Shepherd's behavior became a valuable investigative tool, though the FBI agents initially expressed skepticism about following a dog's lead. That skepticism evaporated when Max led them to an abandoned hunting cabin 15 miles outside Oak Haven, where they discovered clothing belonging to 2 of the missing children and documentation linking the location to a larger trafficking network for the Wilson family. Max's dual identity as both their protector and an active crime fighter created a complex situation. Lily's attachment to the dog deepened daily, yet Max was frequently absent on his self-appointed missions. Sarah worried about the psychological impact on her daughter if Max never fully settled into family life. "He's caught between 2 worlds," she confided to Thomas one evening. "Between being our pet and being an officer. I'm not sure he can be both." Their conversation was interrupted by Lily's sudden coughing fit from upstairs. Sarah rushed to her daughter's bedroom, finding Lily wheezing, her face flushed with fever. Inhaler, Lily gasped, pointing to her nightstand. Sarah administered the medication, but Lily's breathing remained labored. "Thomas?" she called, trying to keep the panic from her voice. "Call Dr. Bennett. Her asthma's flaring badly." The pediatrician advised bringing Lily to the emergency room immediately if her condition didn't improve within the hour. Thomas checked their supply of medication, his expression grim. "We're almost out of her prescription. I'll call the pharmacy for a refill." Max appeared in the doorway, his posture alert as he observed Lily's distress. The German shepherd padded silently to her bedside, resting his head near her hand in an uncharacteristic display of affection. Lily's fingers curled weakly in his fur. "He knows she's sick," Thomas whispered. By morning, Lily's condition had stabilized, but Bennett recommended keeping her home from school for several days. The episode highlighted a growing concern Lily's asthma was becoming more difficult to manage, especially with autumn allergens in full force. While Lily recovered, the investigation into Walter Connolly continued developing. The FBI confirmed connections to a multi-state trafficking operation. But key pieces remained missing, including the locations of the still missing children. Officer Carter became a regular visitor to the Wilson home, both to check on Lily and to study Max's behavior. One afternoon, he arrived with news that sent a chill through the household. "Connolly made bail this morning," he informed them grimly. His family in Nebraska posted a substantial bond. The judge restricted him to house arrest with an ankle monitor pending trial. But he's out. Sarah's face paled. "How is that possible, after everything they found?" His lawyer argued that the evidence in his vehicle doesn't directly prove his involvement in abductions, only that he possessed items belonging to missing children. Without witnesses or direct evidence of kidnapping, they couldn't hold him indefinitely. Carter's frustration was evident. "We're maintaining surveillance, but I wanted you to know we've also stationed an officer near your home as a precaution." That night, Max refused to enter his garage shelter, instead positioning himself beneath Lily's window, his eyes constantly scanning the darkness. Thomas brought out a blanket, draping it over the dog's back against the autumn chill. "We understand," he told Max softly. "Do what you need to do." The following day, Oak Haven buzzed with tension. Parents accompanied their children to school, casting suspicious glances at unfamiliar vehicles. The elementary school implemented strict new security protocols. Community watch groups formed overnight, organizing patrols and communication networks. At the Wilson home, Sarah noticed something troubling. Max's vigilance had intensified to concerning levels. The German shepherd barely slept, pacing constantly, his attention fixated on potential threats. When he did rest, it was in short bursts, his body tense even in slumber. "He senses something," Sarah told Thomas that evening. "I've never seen him this alert. Not even after the incident with Lily." Thomas nodded slowly. "Carter said Connolly's ankle monitor shows he hasn't left his brother's house since release. But Max doesn't know that. Maybe it's not just Connolly he's worried about," Sarah suggested. "What if there are others involved in this trafficking ring? People we don't know about yet?" Their concerns deepened when Lily mentioned a car she'd seen driving slowly past their house multiple times. "It was dark blue," she told her father. Max growled at it. Thomas immediately contacted Carter, who promised to increase patrols in their area. The officer arrived that afternoon with disturbing news. Walter Connolly had somehow disabled his ankle monitor. He had disappeared. "We've got every available officer looking for him," Carter assured them. "In the meantime, I'd recommend taking extra precautions. Don't let Lily out of your sight." That evening, the Oak Haven Community Center hosted an emergency meeting to address the growing crisis. Parents, teachers, and law enforcement gathered to share information and coordinate safety measures. Thomas attended while Sarah stayed home with Lily. As the meeting progressed, Thomas's phone vibrated with a text from Sarah. "Max acting strange. Won't stop barking at back door. Called Carter. He's checking perimeter." Thomas immediately excused himself, racing home through the darkening streets. When he arrived, he found Carter's patrol car in the driveway, its door open but no sign of the officer. The house appeared quiet from the front, all windows intact, lights glowing warmly within, heart pounding. Thomas approached cautiously, calling out as he entered, "Sarah Lily." "In here," Sarah's voice called from the kitchen, oddly tight. "Everything's fine." Thomas rounded the corner and froze. Sarah stood rigidly by the sink, her face pale. Lily sat at the table, eyes wide with fear. And behind them, Walter Connolly pressed a knife against Carter's throat, the young officer's service weapon in his other hand. "Welcome home, Mr. Wilson," Connolly said pleasantly, as though they were meeting for a parent-teacher conference. "Please join your family. We have some business to discuss." "Where's Max?" Thomas asked, his eyes darting around the room. "Your heroic dog." Connolly's smile tightened. "I came prepared this time, sedative-laced meat. He's taking a little nap in your backyard. Now sit down." Thomas complied, his mind racing. If Max had been drugged, their best protection was neutralized. He needed to buy time. "What do you want?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady for Lily's sake. "Originally just to leave town quietly." Connolly's voice remained eerily calm. "But your daughter and that damn dog ruined everything. Do you have any idea what you've cost me? My entire operation is compromised." "You won't get away with this," Carter said through gritted teeth, wincing as the knife pressed deeper. "I already have the connections and resources to disappear," Connolly replied. "New identity, new location. I've done it before. But first, I need insurance." His gaze shifted to Lily. "She's coming with me." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged," Connolly responded coldly. "But unnecessary deaths complicate things. Cooperation ensures everyone survives tonight." Thomas's mind raced through options, each more desperate than the last. The situation seemed hopeless until he noticed a slight movement through the kitchen window, a dark shape rising unsteadily in the backyard. Max was awake. Thomas kept his expression carefully neutral, avoiding any glance toward the window that might alert Connolly to Max's recovery. Instead, he focused on maintaining eye contact with the intruder, buying precious seconds for whatever might happen next. "The police know you've escaped monitoring," Thomas said, his voice deliberately measured. "They'll be checking here. You won't make it far with Lily." Connolly's smile didn't waver. "By the time they organize a proper search, we'll be long gone. I have associates waiting." He shifted his grip on Carter's service weapon, keeping it trained on the family while maintaining the knife at the officer's throat. "Now, Mrs. Wilson, you're going to pack a small bag for Lily. Essentials only. And don't forget her asthma medication." Sarah remained frozen, her eyes blazing with a mother's fury. "Mom," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't breathe very good." The words sent a jolt of fear through Sarah. Lily's face had indeed taken on a concerning flush, her breathing becoming more labored. Whether from fear or an actual asthma attack beginning, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. "She needs her inhaler," Sarah said urgently. "It's in the bathroom upstairs." Connolly hesitated, clearly calculating risks. "Mr. Wilson will get it. You stay where I can see you." As Thomas rose slowly, Connolly added, "No heroics. Remember, I have your daughter and this officer. 1 minute. No more." Thomas moved with deliberate calm toward the stairs, his mind racing. The inhaler was actually in the kitchen drawer, not upstairs. Sarah was creating a diversion, but for what purpose? He ascended the stairs loudly, making his presence known, while straining to hear any sounds from below, outside in the gathering darkness. Max fought against the sedative still coursing through his system. The drugged meat had taken him by surprise, a rookie mistake he wouldn't have made in his prime. Now, his training battled with the chemical. Each step an exercise in determination as he circled the house, seeking entry. The kitchen window was cracked open several inches, enough for sound to carry, but too small for his frame. Max continued his unsteady patrol until he reached the laundry room window, left open wider to catch the evening breeze. With tremendous effort, he gathered his strength and leaped. Inside the kitchen, Sarah watched Connolly with calculating eyes. "Lily needs water with her medication. It helps it work faster." "Fine," Connolly snapped, gesturing with the gun toward the sink. Slowly, Sarah moved deliberately, positioning herself between Connolly and the drawer containing Lily's inhaler. As she reached for a glass, she casually slid the drawer open with her hip, fingers discreetly searching for the medication. Officer Carter caught her movement and understood the strategy. "My shoulder's cramping in this position," he complained loudly, shifting his weight to draw Connolly's attention. The distraction worked. Connolly's focus momentarily shifted to Carter, allowing Sarah to palm the inhaler. The sound of breaking glass upstairs made everyone freeze. "What was that?" Connolly demanded, his voice sharp with suspicion. "Old house?" Sarah improvised quickly. "The windows stick. Thomas probably forced one open to signal for help." Connolly's expression darkened. "Call him down. Now." Before Sarah could respond, a new sound emerged, the thump of something heavy landing on the laundry room floor, followed by the click of nails on tile. Connolly spun toward the noise, dragging Carter with him as a shield. What was that? The laundry room door, already ajar, slowly swung wider. Max stood in the doorway, his stance unsteady, but his eyes focused with laser intensity on Connolly. The sedative had compromised his coordination, but the German Shepherd's training ran deeper than any drug. "Shoot it," Connolly hissed, raising the gun toward Max. What happened next unfolded in seconds that seemed stretched into eternity. Max launched himself across the kitchen, not in a direct attack as Connolly expected, but in a flanking maneuver learned through years of tactical training. Carter, recognizing the K9 strategy, used the momentary distraction to slam his elbow backward into Connolly's solar plexus. The knife at Carter's throat wavered. Sarah seized the opportunity to shove Lily under the kitchen table, shielding her daughter with her body. Connolly fired the weapon, the bullet embedding itself in the cabinet inches from where Max had been a split second before. The German Shepherd, though slowed by the sedative, executed a textbook takedown, clamping powerful jaws around Connolly's gun wrist with precisely calculated pressure enough to immobilize without severing arteries. Connolly screamed, the gun clattering to the floor. Carter immediately dove for the weapon while Thomas thundered down the stairs, taking in the scene with a glance before rushing to help subdue the intruder. Max maintained his hold on Connolly even as the man thrashed and cursed, his training ensuring he wouldn't release until commanded by the appropriate authority. Carter, now armed with his recovered service weapon, called out the formal canine release command he'd learned from studying Max's records. "Max, release, good boy. Stand down." The German Shepherd immediately let go, backing up 2 precise steps while maintaining his focus on the suspect. Thomas helped Carter secure Connolly with kitchen twine until proper restraints could be obtained. Through it all, Max remained in perfect position, his police training evident in every movement despite the obvious effect of the sedative still slowing his reflexes. Sarah emerged from under the table with Lily, administering the inhaler with shaking hands. "It's okay, baby. It's over." Deep breaths. Carter radioed for backup and medical assistance, his voice tight with controlled adrenaline. "Suspect apprehended. Officer and civilian safe. Requesting immediate support and medical team for a child with asthma complications." Within minutes, the Wilson kitchen became a flurry of activity as police officers secured the scene and paramedics attended to Lily. Chief Anderson arrived, his weathered face grim as he supervised Connolly's formal arrest and transport. "He didn't act alone," Carter reported, nodding toward the window. "There's a vehicle waiting down the block. Driver fled when our units arrived." Anderson dispatched officers to search the area, though the accomplice had likely escaped. "We'll get them," he assured the Wilsons. "This breaks open the whole operation." As the paramedics prepared to transport Lily to the hospital for monitoring, the little girl reached out toward Max, who had finally allowed himself to lie down, the last of his energy expended in the confrontation. "Can Max come?" she asked, her voice small beneath the oxygen mask. The paramedic looked uncertainly at the large German Shepherd, now being examined by a veterinarian who had been called to the scene. "The dog's been drugged," the vet explained. "He needs monitoring too, but he'll recover." Whoever did this knew enough to use a standard sedative, not something lethal. Sarah looked to Thomas, a silent communication passing between them. "We'll bring him once he's cleared," she promised Lily. "The doctors need to help both of you." Later that night, the emergency room of Oak Haven Memorial Hospital witnessed an unprecedented scene. After being cleared by the veterinarian and given fluids to help process the remaining sedative, Max was permitted a brief, supervised visit to Lily's room, where the little girl was stabilized and resting comfortably. Hospital regulations strictly prohibited animals, but Chief Anderson had personally intervened, citing the extraordinary circumstances and Max's service status. "Just 10 minutes," the nurse warned, holding the door as Thomas led Max into the room on a borrowed leash. Lily's face lit up at the sight of her protector. "Max, you came—" The German Shepherd approached the hospital bed cautiously, sniffing the strange environment and medical equipment with professional assessment before gently resting his head on the edge of Lily's mattress. His amber eyes, though still showing the effects of the sedative, remained watchful and protective. Sarah wiped away tears as she watched her daughter gently stroke the dog's head. "He saved us all," she whispered to Thomas. "Twice now." In the hospital corridor, Chief Anderson conferred with Agent Walsh from the FBI and Officer Carter. "Connolly's talking," Anderson reported in hushed tones. "Trying to cut a deal. Claims he can identify the entire trafficking network in exchange for consideration." "What about the missing children?" Carter asked, the question that weighed most heavily on everyone's minds. Agent Walsh's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes reflected cautious optimism. "We have locations to investigate based on his initial statements. Teams are mobilizing now." "And his accomplice tonight," Anderson pressed, "claims it was his contact from the larger organization." Walsh explained. "Someone sent to extract him after his monitoring device was disabled. Connolly says he went off script by coming here. He was supposed to be taken directly to a safe house." "Why risk coming after Lily?" Carter wondered aloud. Anderson's weathered face hardened. Revenge, pride. These types can't stand being outsmarted, especially by a child and a dog. The community fair planned for that weekend transformed into an impromptu gathering of support for the Wilson family. Oak Haven residents, shaken by how close they'd come to losing another child, rallied together in a display of solidarity. The elementary school implemented comprehensive new security measures, and volunteer patrols organized throughout the neighborhood. 3 days after the incident, with Lily recovered enough to return home, the Wilsons found their front yard decorated with handmade signs, flowers, and dog treats left as offerings for Max. The German Shepherd inspected each item with professional thoroughness before allowing the family to bring them inside. Local media descended on Oak Haven, eager to capture the story of the heroic police dog who had traveled hundreds of miles to continue his duty. Requests for interviews flooded the Wilsons' phone. Most declined as the family focused on recovery and normalcy. Officer Carter became a fixture at their home, bringing updates on the investigation and spending hours with Max, studying the remarkable dog's behaviors and helping the Wilsons understand his needs. The FBI raided 3 locations based on Connolly's information. Carter informed them on his 4th visit. They found evidence confirming his involvement in a multi-state trafficking operation. Documents, photographs, transfer schedules. Sarah clutched Thomas's hand tightly. "And the children?" Carter's expression remained carefully neutral. One location was empty. Another had clearly been abandoned recently. They found children's clothing and personal items. The third, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully with Lily playing in the next room. They recovered 2 children, alive, being transported to medical facilities now. "Thank God," Thomas breathed, closing his eyes briefly. "There's more," Carter continued, lowering his voice. "Based on intelligence gathered, they're planning coordinated raids in New Mexico and Utah tomorrow. They believe the remaining missing children might be found at those locations." The news provided hope, but the Wilsons remained acutely aware of how the trafficking network had nearly claimed their own daughter. That night, after Lily was asleep, Sarah found Thomas sitting on the back porch with Max, sharing a quiet moment under the stars. "I keep thinking about how differently this could have ended," Thomas said as she joined them. If Max hadn't been here. Sarah nodded, unable to voice the terrifying alternative outcomes that haunted her dreams. Instead, she reached out to stroke Max's fur, noticing how the German shepherd, while still alert, had finally begun to relax his vigilant posture. Dr. Simmons says his protective instincts toward Lily are helping him transition, she said softly, giving him purpose beyond his police work. He's found a new partner to protect, Thomas agreed. And a family, Sarah added. The following morning brought unexpected news. Chief Anderson arrived at their door with Carter and Agent Walsh in tow, their expressions unreadable. "May we come in?" Anderson asked. "There's been a significant development in the case." The Wilsons exchanged concerned glances before inviting them into the living room. Max immediately positioned himself beside Lily, who was working on a drawing at the coffee table. Agent Walsh spoke first. The raids in New Mexico and Utah were successful. All remaining children identified in connection with Connolly's operation have been recovered safely. Sarah clasped her hands to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. "All of them, they're alive." Walsh nodded, allowing a rare smile to break through her professional demeanor. "Yes, all alive. Some have been missing for over a year, but preliminary medical assessments indicate they'll recover with proper care and support." The relief in the room was palpable, but something in Anderson's expression suggested there was more to the story. "There's something else," the chief confirmed. "Something directly connected to Max." Anderson nodded to Agent Walsh, who pulled a folder from her briefcase and placed it carefully on the coffee table. "During the raid in Utah, we recovered extensive documentation about the trafficking operation. Among those documents were detailed records of their security protocols and countermeasures against law enforcement." Thomas leaned forward, brow furrowed. "What kind of countermeasures? Primarily surveillance and bribery," Walsh explained, her tone clinical though her eyes betrayed deeper emotion. "But in some cases, more direct action." She opened the folder and removed a photograph, hesitating before turning it toward the Wilsons. The image showed Officer Michael Reynolds, Max's former handler, smiling in his Denver Police Department uniform, a younger and less scarred Max sitting proudly beside him. "We found this in the possession of the operations security coordinator," Walsh continued, "along with detailed surveillance notes about Officer Reynolds' movements and routines in the weeks leading up to his death." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Are you saying—" "Officer Reynolds' death was not from natural causes," Anderson confirmed grimly. "Based on the new evidence, the medical examiner in Denver has reopened the case and is conducting additional toxicology screenings. Preliminary results indicate the presence of a sophisticated compound that mimics the effects of cardiac arrest." "He was murdered," Thomas said flatly, the words hanging heavy in the room. Max, who had been watching the conversation with attentive eyes, rose to his feet at the appearance of the photograph, his nose twitching with interest. He approached cautiously, sniffing the image of his former handler, a low whine escaping his throat. "Yes," Walsh nodded. "The evidence strongly suggests that Officer Reynolds was killed because he was getting too close to uncovering the trafficking operation, approximately 3 weeks before his death. He had identified a potential connection between several missing children cases across state lines." Carter picked up the thread. "Reynolds was building a case, but keeping it quiet. According to his former partner, he suspected internal leaks in law enforcement. He was right to be cautious. We've already identified 2 officers in different jurisdictions who were on the organization's payroll. Thomas's eyes never left Max, who continued to study the photograph with obvious recognition. And Max, where does he fit into all this? Anderson exchanged glances with Walsh before answering. We believe Max witnessed his handler's murder. The simple statement landed like a physical blow. Sarah gasped, while Thomas stared at the German Shepherd with new understanding. The documents indicate that the organization sent someone to Reynolds' home. Walsh explained. They administered the toxin while making it appear to be a routine visit, possibly posing as utility workers or delivery personnel. What they didn't account for was Max's presence. Carter leaned forward, his expression somber. According to Reynolds' neighbors, Max became extremely agitated that day, barking and attempting to prevent anyone from approaching his handler's body. Animal control had to be called to contain him before medical personnel could enter the residence. The organization considered eliminating Max as well, Walsh continued, her clinical tone faltering slightly, but decided against it, reasoning that the death of a K-9 officer immediately following his handler would raise too many questions. They assumed placing him with a new family would be sufficient. Thomas shook his head in disbelief. But it wasn't. He ran away. And somehow found his way here, Sarah whispered, watching as Max finally turned away from the photograph, returning to his position beside Lily, who remained absorbed in her drawing, blissfully unaware of the dark conversation surrounding her. We believe Max has been tracking the organization's operations, Carter said, his voice tinged with admiration. Following scents, patterns, connections that led him across state lines. His behavior since arriving in Oak Haven, the specific locations he's investigated. The routes he's patrolled, they align with what we now know about the trafficking network's movements. He's been hunting them, Anderson summarized. Continuing his handler's last case, the revelation cast Max's presence in Oak Haven in an entirely new light. Not coincidence, but purpose had guided the German Shepherd's extraordinary journey. Every patrol, every investigation of abandoned properties, every vigilant watch had been part of his mission, a mission that had inadvertently saved Lily from becoming another victim. There's more, Walsh said after a moment, her expression grave. We found evidence suggesting that Connolly wasn't operating alone in Oak Haven. He had at least one local accomplice who helped him establish his false identity and position at the school. The implication sent a chill through the room. Someone else in their tight-knit community had been involved. Someone still unidentified. Do you have suspects? Thomas asked. We're pursuing several leads. Anderson answered carefully. But until we have confirmation, I'd ask you to keep this information confidential. We don't want to tip off the accomplice. After the officials departed, the Wilson home fell into a heavy silence, broken only by Lily's occasional comments to Max as she continued her artwork. Sarah and Thomas retreated to the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. I can't believe someone in Oak Haven is involved, Sarah said, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her coffee mug. Someone we probably know. Someone we trust. Thomas gazed out the window at their once peaceful neighborhood, now transformed by the shadow of suspicion. Makes you wonder who it could be. A teacher. Someone in administration who helped with Connolly's background check. A parent. The possibilities were disturbing, fracturing the sense of safety they had struggled to rebuild after Connolly's arrest. That evening, as Thomas secured the house with newly installed locks and security features. Sarah sat beside Lily's bed for longer than usual, watching her daughter sleep peacefully with Max curled protectively at her feet. "He knew," she whispered to Thomas when he joined her in the hallway. "Somehow, Max knew Lily was in danger before any of us did." He positioned himself in our neighborhood, watched over the children, waited for the moment he'd be needed. The following day brought another unexpected development. Dr. Bennett called with Lily's latest test results, her voice carrying a mix of concern and cautious optimism. "Her respiratory function is still compromised," the doctor explained. "But I've been consulting with a specialist in Denver who's pioneering a new treatment protocol for pediatric asthma. Given Lily's recent trauma and ongoing symptoms, she might be an excellent candidate for the program." "What would that involve?" Sarah asked, hope mingling with apprehension. "Initially, weekly visits to Denver Children's Hospital for evaluation and treatment. If she responds well, we could potentially transition to monthly visits. The early results from the program are extremely promising, especially for children with Lily's specific triggers." The prospect of regular travel to Denver, the very city from which Max had journeyed, struck Sarah as a significant coincidence. When she discussed the treatment option with Thomas that evening, he had the same thought. "Maybe it's meant to be," he suggested. "Max came to us from Denver, and now Lily needs to go there for treatment. Full circle in a way." The German Shepherd had been unusually restless that day, pacing the perimeter of their property with heightened vigilance. When Carter stopped by with another update on the investigation, Max's behavior intensified, his attention repeatedly drawn to something beyond their fence line. "He's sensing something," Carter observed, following Max's gaze toward the wooded area that bordered the eastern edge of their property. "Has he been like this all day?" "Since this morning," Thomas confirmed. "We checked the security cameras, but they didn't pick up anything unusual." Carter's expression grew concerned. "I don't like it. With the accomplice still at large, we can't be too careful." He radioed for a patrol unit to search the surrounding area. 20 minutes later, officers reported finding fresh footprints in the soft earth near the woods, along with cigarette butts suggesting someone had been watching the Wilson home. The discovery sent a new wave of anxiety through the family. Someone was monitoring them, perhaps waiting for an opportunity. That night, despite increased police patrols, Max refused to enter the house, maintaining his position on the back porch with a clear view of the wooded area. Thomas brought out blankets and a camping chair, deciding to keep watch alongside the determined German Shepherd. "We'll stand guard together," he told Max, who acknowledged the partnership with a subtle shift closer to Thomas's chair. Around midnight, as a light rain began to fall, Thomas noticed headlights moving slowly down their street, a vehicle passing their house for the third time in an hour. He texted Carter, who was coordinating the overnight surveillance from his patrol car stationed discreetly at the end of the block. The suspicious vehicle, a dark sedan with tinted windows, disappeared around the corner, but didn't return. When Carter approached on foot 10 minutes later, his expression was grim. "We ran the plates," he said in a hushed voice. "Registered to Martin Grayson." Thomas frowned. The school board president, the one who personally recommended Connolly. Carter nodded. "We've had suspicions about who might have helped Connolly establish himself here. Grayson had the authority to fast-track hiring and bypass certain background check protocols. My God, Thomas whispered. He's been at our house for dinner. He knows Lily. As the implications sank in, Max suddenly stiffened beside them, a low growl rumbling in his chest as he stared intently toward the darkened yard. Before either man could react, a sharp crack echoed through the night, and Thomas felt a searing pain as a bullet grazed his shoulder. "Get down!" Carter shouted, drawing his weapon and pulling Thomas behind the porch railing as a second shot splintered wood inches from their heads. Max sprang into action, leaping from the porch and disappearing into the darkness with military precision, not charging blindly toward danger, but flanking, using the shadows and rain as cover. Inside the house, lights flashed on as Sarah was jolted awake by the gunfire. She rushed to Lily's room, gathering her frightened daughter into her arms and retreating to the bathroom, the innermost room with no windows, exactly as they had practiced in their family emergency drills. "Shots fired at 1427 Willow Lane," Carter reported into his radio, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Officer on scene. Suspect believed to be Martin Grayson. Civilian injured. Ambulance needed. Approach with caution. Suspect is armed." Thomas pressed his hand to his bleeding shoulder. The pain sharp but manageable. "It's just a graze," he assured Carter, though his pale face suggested otherwise. Max went after him. Carter's expression tightened with concern. "Backup's 3 minutes out. Stay here." Before Thomas could protest, the young officer had slipped from the porch, taking cover behind a large oak tree at the edge of the yard. The rain was falling harder now, reducing visibility and muffling sounds, creating ideal conditions for an ambush. Somewhere in the darkness, Max was silent, a tactical silence trained into him by years of police work. No barking to give away his position, no sounds as he navigated the familiar territory. Thomas strained to hear any indication of the German shepherd's whereabouts, but the rain masked all but the most immediate sounds. A sudden crash from the side of the house drew Carter's attention. The officer pivoted, weapon raised, as a shadowy figure stumbled into view. Martin Grayson, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled, a hunting rifle clutched in his hands. Behind him, like a ghost materializing from the rain, came Max, herding the man with the precision of his shepherd ancestry. "Drop your weapon," Carter commanded, stepping into view with his service pistol trained on Grayson. "Down on your knees, hands behind your head." Grayson froze, his eyes wild with desperation as he glanced between Carter and the German shepherd, blocking his escape route. For a moment, it seemed he might comply, then, with startling quickness, he swung the rifle toward the porch where Thomas remained partially exposed. What happened next unfolded in fractions of seconds. Max launched himself at Grayson's arm. Carter fired a warning shot, and the school board president stumbled backward, his rifle discharging harmlessly into the air before clattering to the ground. The German shepherd maintained his hold, forcing Grayson to his knees just as police sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly louder. Within minutes, the quiet street transformed into a flurry of emergency vehicles, police cruisers with flashing lights. An ambulance for Thomas, and Chief Anderson's unmarked car pulling up behind them. Neighbors emerged from their homes in bathrobes and pajamas, watching in stunned disbelief as Martin Grayson, respected community leader, chairman of multiple charity committees, was handcuffed and placed in the back of a police car. Max stood watch through it all, his posture alert but calm, responding only when Carter finally gave the formal, all-clear command that allowed the German shepherd to relax his vigilance. As paramedics attended to Thomas's wounded shoulder, Sarah and Lily emerged cautiously from the house, the little girl running immediately to Max and throwing her arms around his neck. "You saved Daddy," she whispered into his fur, tears streaming down her face. "You're the best dog ever." In the chaotic aftermath, Chief Anderson approached the Wilson family, his weathered face grim but satisfied. "Grayson's talking already," he informed them quietly. "Trying to cut a deal like Connolly. Claims he was just the facilitator, not directly involved in the abductions." "Do you believe him?" Sarah asked, her arm protectively around Lily's shoulders. Anderson's expression hardened. "Doesn't matter what I believe. The evidence will tell the story. We've already obtained warrants for his home, office, and electronic devices." The chief's prediction proved accurate. By morning, the FBI had uncovered damning evidence from Grayson's computer financial transactions linking him to the trafficking network, communications with Connolly dating back over a year, and most disturbing of all, a list of potential acquisitions that included detailed information about children from Oak Haven and surrounding communities. Lily's name had been highlighted, with notes about her routine and the times she would be walking alone. The discovery sent shockwaves through Oak Haven. Parents who had entrusted their children's safety to the school system now questioned everything and everyone. Emergency school board meetings were called, background checks were rerun on all staff, and police presence around the elementary school doubled for the Wilson family. The arrest of Grayson brought a measure of closure but also new complications. Thomas's injury, while not life-threatening, required surgery to remove bullet fragments and repair damaged tissue. The procedure was scheduled at Denver Memorial Hospital, ironically coinciding with Lily's first appointment for the specialized asthma treatment program. "We'll make it work," Sarah assured Thomas as she packed for their trip to Denver. "Mom can come stay with you while I take Lily to her appointment." Thomas shook his head, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his bandaged shoulder. "I want us all together. After everything that's happened, I need to know you're both safe." The question of Max complicated their plans further. The German Shepherd had become inseparable from Lily, his protective instincts now permanently fixed on the little girl who had shown him kindness when others had feared him. The prospect of leaving him behind, even temporarily, seemed impossible, yet bringing a large dog to medical appointments presented obvious challenges. It was Officer Carter who offered a solution. Arriving at their house the evening before their scheduled departure for Denver, "I've been in touch with Denver PD's K-9 unit," he explained, presenting a folder of official documents. "Given Max's service history and the extraordinary circumstances, they've agreed to reinstate his official K-9 officer status on a special basis. With these papers, he'll have access to most facilities as a service animal." The arrangement was unprecedented but reflected the unusual nature of their situation. Max had, after all, been instrumental in breaking open a multi-state trafficking operation and protecting potential victims. His actions went beyond what anyone might expect from even the most dedicated police dog. As the Wilsons prepared for their journey to Denver, investigators continued piecing together the full extent of Grayson and Connolly's operation. Agent Walsh provided regular updates, each more disturbing than the last. "We've identified at least 17 children targeted by their network over the past 2 years," she told them during her final briefing before their departure. "Thanks to Max and the evidence recovered, 12 have been safely recovered. Search operations continue for the remaining 5. "And Officer Reynolds?" Thomas asked quietly, mindful of Max's attentive presence beside Lily on the couch. "Any progress on his case?" Walsh nodded, her professional demeanor softening slightly. The medical examiner has confirmed poisoning. We have a suspect in custody, a low-level operative who confessed to posing as a package delivery person. He's cooperating in exchange for consideration. The news brought a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction that Reynolds's killer would face justice, grief for the life cut short, and wonder at the extraordinary journey that had brought his loyal partner into their lives. On the morning of their departure, the Wilsons loaded their luggage into their SUV, Max settling himself in the back seat beside Lily with the dignity of a royal escort. The German Shepherd wore a new vest bearing the Denver Police Department K9 insignia, his official reinstatement complete with updated tags and documentation. As Thomas eased the vehicle out of their driveway, neighbors gathered along the street in an impromptu farewell parade. Children held handmade signs thanking Max and wishing Lily well. Parents waved and called out encouragements. Even Mrs. Abernathy, whose call to police had been the first step in unraveling the entire case, stood on her porch in her bathrobe, wiping tears as she waved goodbye. "We'll be back in a week," Sarah reminded Thomas as he grew emotional at the display of community support. "This isn't a permanent goodbye." "I know," he replied, clearing his throat. "It's just, after everything that's happened, seeing everyone come together like this." The 5-hour drive to Denver passed uneventfully, Max maintaining his vigilant watch from the back seat, occasionally resting his head on Lily's lap when she grew tired. They arrived at their hotel, which had approved Max's presence after reviewing his service credentials in late afternoon, settling in before Thomas's pre-operative appointment. Denver Memorial Hospital stood as an imposing structure against the Rocky Mountain backdrop, its modern glass facade reflecting the setting sun as they approached the main entrance. Max walked precisely at Lily's side, his demeanor shifting subtly into working mode alert, professional, focused. At the reception desk, the clerk's eyes widened at the sight of the German Shepherd, but the official documentation and service vest prevented any objections. They were directed to the surgical consultation unit on the 4th floor, where Thomas would meet with his surgical team. As they navigated the busy hospital corridors, Max's behavior began to change. His ears perked forward, nose twitching with increasing interest. By the time they reached the surgical wing, the German Shepherd was visibly alert, his attention focused down a side hallway with laser intensity. "What is it, boy?" Thomas asked, noticing the change. "What do you smell?" Max looked up at Thomas, then back down the hallway, his body language communicating clear interest, but not alarm. "Maybe he remembers this place from his time in Denver," Sarah suggested. "Should we let him investigate? We're early for your appointment." Thomas hesitated, then nodded. "Carter said we should trust his instincts. They've been right so far." With Lily between them, they followed Max's lead down the corridor, the German Shepherd moving with increasing purpose until they reached a staff area marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Max sat directly in front of the door, his posture rigid with anticipation. "We can't go in there," Sarah whispered, tugging gently on Max's leash. "Come on, boy." The door swung open unexpectedly, revealing a doctor in surgical scrubs consulting a chart. He glanced up distractedly, his gaze passing over the family before landing on Max. The chart slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor as his face drained of color. "My God," the doctor whispered. his voice barely audible. "Max, is that really you?" The German Shepherd's reaction was immediate and unmistakable, a soft whine of recognition, his tail sweeping the floor in controlled excitement, body quivering with restrained emotion. Thomas stared at the doctor, recognition dawning slowly as he connected the man's face with the photograph they'd been shown. You can't be." The doctor swallowed hard, his eyes never leaving the German Shepherd. "Officer Michael Reynolds," he confirmed, his voice breaking slightly. "Max's handler, and according to my death certificate, I've been dead for 18 months. The private consultation room on the hospital's 5th floor seemed too ordinary for the extraordinary conversation taking place within its walls. Thomas sat with his arm in a sling, Sarah beside him clutching his hand, while Lily leaned against Max, who hadn't taken his eyes off Michael Reynolds since their reunion. "I never thought I'd see him again," Reynolds said, his voice thick with emotion as he watched his former partner. The doctor, who now went by the name Daniel Mitchell, looked both younger and older than his photograph. His hair had grayed at the temples, and circular glasses framed eyes that had seen too much. Yet there was an energy about him that belied his supposed death. "The FBI told us you were murdered," Thomas said, still struggling to reconcile the man before them with the tragic story they'd been told. Reynolds or Mitchell nodded slowly. "Technically, that's true. Michael Reynolds did die, according to all official records. I was poisoned, just as they discovered. But a nurse spotted the symptoms early enough to save my life." His fingers unconsciously traced the outline of Max's ears, a familiar gesture from their years together. "By the time I recovered, the FBI had connected my heart attack to the trafficking case I was building. They offered me a choice: enter witness protection or become a target again, possibly endangering everyone around me." "So you became Dr. Mitchell," Sarah said, watching the evident bond between man and dog with wonder. "I was already halfway through medical school when I joined the police force," he explained. "Always thought I'd finish someday. Witness protection made it possible, though under different circumstances than I'd imagined." A sad smile crossed his face. "The hardest part was leaving Max. They wouldn't let me take him too recognizable. Too much connection to my old life. I thought he'd be safe with his new family." "He ran away," Lily piped up, her small hand buried in Max's fur. "He was looking for you." Reynolds blinked rapidly behind his glasses. "So it seems. When I saw the news reports about a hero police dog in Arizona who'd saved a child, I didn't make the connection at first. Then they showed his picture." He trailed off, overwhelmed by the implications. "Somehow, he tracked me, across 3 states, following a trail over a year old." The revelation hung in the air, both miraculous and slightly unsettling. Max's journey had been even more purposeful than they'd realized, not just continuing his handler's work, but searching for the man himself. "The FBI believes Max was hunting the trafficking network because they killed you," Thomas said. "But he was actually tracking you." Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. "Both, probably. Max was trained to follow complex scent patterns. In Denver, we were developing techniques for K9 units to track subjects across urban environments using residual scent markers." Pride colored his voice. "He was the best tracker in the program. If anyone could follow a trail that old and complicated, it would be Max." But why come to Oak Haven? Sarah wondered aloud. How did that connect to finding you? I had investigated a potential trafficking hub near Oak Haven during my last case, Reynolds explained. It's possible Max associated those locations with our work together. Or perhaps, he hesitated, stroking Max's head gently. Perhaps he followed the trail as far as he could, then continued his mission where he sensed he was needed. Lily, who had been listening intently, offered her own simple explanation. He was waiting for someone to help. The adults fell silent, struck by the child's innocent wisdom. Max had indeed positioned himself precisely where he would eventually be needed most, watching over the school, observing the community, ready to intervene when danger threatened. Reynolds cleared his throat, visibly struggling with emotion. When I entered witness protection, I had to sever all connections to my past life. No contact with former colleagues, friends, family. It was lonely. I threw myself into medicine, into building this new identity. He gestured around the consultation room. I specialize in trauma surgery now, saving lives in a different way. The FBI told us the trafficking organization has been dismantled, Thomas said. Most of the leaders are in custody. Does that mean you can come out of hiding? Reynolds exchanged a look with Max before answering. My handler at the U.S. Marshal Service is evaluating that possibility. The main organizers are indeed in custody. But networks like these have deep roots. They're being cautious. Sarah watched the interaction between man and dog with growing understanding. You two deserve to be together again, she said softly. After everything Max has done finding you, stopping Connolly, protecting Lily, he's earned his retirement with his real family. Reynolds' expression crumpled slightly. I've missed him every day, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. But your daughter clearly loves him too. And after what he did for her, we can share, Lily declared with the simple certainty of childhood, causing the adults to exchange surprised glances. Max can live with us and visit Dr. Mitchell sometimes, or live with Dr. Mitchell and visit us. The unexpected solution, offered so matter-of-factly, broke the tension in the room. Thomas chuckled despite his painful shoulder. From the mouths of babes, he said. Maybe there's a way to make this work for everyone. The conversation shifted to practical matters. Thomas's upcoming surgery, Lily's specialized asthma treatment, and the legal complexities of Reynolds's potential emergence from witness protection. Through it all, Max remained a steady presence, occasionally shifting his attention between Reynolds and Lily as though taking inventory of the people most important to him. As the afternoon progressed, Agent Walsh arrived at the hospital. Having been notified of the unexpected reunion, her normally impassive face registered genuine surprise when she entered the consultation room to find Reynolds alive and well. This complicates matters, she observed dryly after the initial explanations, but also simplifies certain aspects of our investigation. She consulted her tablet briefly. The U.S. Marshal Service has conditionally approved your return to public life. Dr. Mitchell, or should I say, Officer Reynolds. The risk assessment has been downgraded following our recent arrests. And Max Reynolds asked immediately, "What happens to him now?" Walsh allowed herself a small smile. Officially, Max remains property of the Denver Police Department, though he was formally retired after your death, given the extraordinary circumstances. They're willing to release him from service with honors. The question of custody, however, remains complex. We've been discussing that, Sarah interjected. And we think we might have a solution that works for everyone, including Max. The arrangement they proposed was unprecedented, but fitting for the extraordinary circumstances. Reynolds would relocate to Phoenix, accepting a position at the medical center where Lily would receive her specialized asthma treatment. The Wilsons would share custody of Max, with the German Shepherd dividing his time between both households based on Lily's treatment schedule and Reynolds' work rotation. It's unconventional, Walsh acknowledged after considering the proposal. But then, everything about this case has defied convention from the beginning. As the details were being finalized, Max suddenly raised his head, ears perked forward in alert attention. A moment later, a nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Wilson, the surgical team is ready for your pre-op consultation." The business of healing both Thomas's shoulder and Lily's asthma took precedence over the remaining questions. Reynolds excused himself to return to his duties, promising to meet them later that evening to continue their discussion. As he rose to leave, Max whined softly, torn between staying with Lily and following his long-lost handler. "It's okay, boy," Reynolds assured him, resting his hand briefly on the German Shepherd's head. "I'm not disappearing again. I promise." The next few days unfolded in a blur of medical appointments, paperwork, and cautious planning. Thomas's surgery was successful, removing the bullet fragments and repairing the damaged tissue with minimal complications. Lily's initial evaluation for the asthma treatment program yielded promising results, with the specialist developing a personalized protocol that would require monthly visits to Denver, soon to be Phoenix, for the next year. Throughout it all, Max remained a constant, grounding presence, dividing his attention between Lily and Reynolds with remarkable balance. The German Shepherd seemed to understand the complexity of the situation, adapting to his new dual role with the same intelligence and dedication he had shown throughout his remarkable journey. On their final evening in Denver, before returning to Oak Haven to prepare for their eventual relocation to Phoenix, the unlikely extended family gathered in the hospital's healing garden. Reynolds, officially using his real name again for the first time in 18 months, brought a special package for Max, his original K9 service collar, preserved as a keepsake after his presumed death. "He's earned the right to wear this again," Reynolds said, carefully fastening the worn leather around Max's neck, replacing the newer Denver PD collar he'd been issued temporarily. The German Shepherd sat proudly, seeming to understand the significance of the moment. "How will this work?" "Exactly?" Thomas asked, his arm still in a sling but the pain noticeably reduced. "Shared custody of a dog between families." Reynolds smiled, watching as Max leaned gently against Lily's side. "I think Max will let us know what works best for him. He's proven himself quite capable of making his own decisions." Sarah nodded in agreement. "He found his way across 3 states on nothing but instinct and loyalty. I think he can manage going between 2 houses in the same city." As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the garden, Lily knelt beside Max, wrapping her arms around his neck in a gentle hug. "You found your person," she whispered to him. "And you found us, too. That makes you the luckiest dog ever." Max responded with a soft whine of contentment, his mission finally complete. He had found his handler, protected the innocent, helped bring down the criminal organization that had threatened them all, and, in the process, gained not just one family but two. For a dog who had traveled so far, guided only by loyalty and purpose. It was an ending that surpassed all expectations. And as Reynolds watched his faithful partner embraced by the little girl whose life he had saved, he knew that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys lead exactly where they're meant to, even when the path seems impossible to follow. In a world that often seems to have forgotten the meaning of loyalty and dedication, Max's story reminds us that some bonds transcend all understanding. Think about it. Friends. This remarkable German shepherd traveled 800 miles, following nothing but his heart and instinct, to find the handler he loved and protect a child he'd never met. Isn't that the kind of faithfulness we all long for in our lives as we grow older? We've seen how the world has changed, how communities aren't what they once were, how people seem more disconnected despite all our technology. But Max's journey proves that true connection still exists, that love and loyalty never go out of style. He reminds us of a time when neighbors looked out for each other, when duty meant something sacred, when promises were kept no matter the cost. For little Lily Wilson and Officer Reynolds, Max was more than a pet or a police dog. He was a guardian angel with fur, proving that sometimes